Thank you so much. Just to introduce myself, I'm Jen Flacco. I started at Philanthropy Network just back in January, specifically to help facilitate Made to Measure, which is an initiative that we're doing based on a grant we received from the Gates Foundation. So I'm contracted, I'm a contractor, not a full-time employee, and I'm being paid for 2 years as part of this grant. Previously, I was with the American Board of Internal Medicine, and prior to that with the Pew Charitable Trust. So just a little bit about me. I'm going to give just a really brief overview of the project before I introduce Sophie and ask her to talk a little bit about herself. So just the basics are that this is a 2-year pilot grant from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. It's meant to facilitate the build of an online platform that can influence giving and grant making. There are 5 organizations that are part of this pilot. Ourselves, Philanthropy Network Greater Philadelphia, the Florida Philanthropic Network, Hispanics in Philanthropy, National Center for Family Philanthropy, and the Philanthropy Workshop. Just a little bit of definition, when we think of an online tool, what we're trying to build is something that you would log on to and it would connect you to other members of Philanthropy Network, allowing you to share information about your grants, your grant strategies, and just talk to each other, make those connections. When we talk about a pilot, we mean that it's a learning opportunity. We're building this online platform in part to learn if it's a useful tool. And we're gonna modify and adjust it based on user input, based on member input, and then ultimately after 2 years, we'll decide on whether it will continue to move forward based on based on you, the members, and how you are finding the project. So now I wanted to introduce Sophie Snowden from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and just ask you, Sophie, to tell us a little bit about yourself, your title, and how you came to Gates.
I'm happy to. Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. My name is Sophie Snowden. I use they, them pronouns, and I am based in Seattle, Washington. I am an interim program officer on the Philanthropic partnerships team at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And I've been at the foundation for about a year. I focus on the intersection of innovation and technology and philanthropy. And prior to joining the foundation, I was in social enterprise focused on a similar intersection, innovation, technology, and really broader social impact. So I worked both with individual nonprofits, assessing their needs and trying to get them tools that were existing, or work with my team to guide the creation of new technologies, specifically for mission-driven organizations, including both nonprofits and philanthropies and other social entrepreneurs. So was in sort of an adjacent space before I hopped over to the foundation, and I'm working on this project with y'all.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but if we could go to the next slide, I just did want to take a moment to mention that we would like your questions. If you put them in the chat, that would be amazing, because then we can capture them if we don't get a chance to answer them at the end of this conversation. I'll take them back with me and work on them. So just wanted to mention that before we move forward. And then, Sophie, talking about the Philanthropic Partnerships Department at Gates, can you just talk a little bit about that department? And, you know, with Gates so well known for programmatic work, how does your department intersect with that?
Sure, happy to. The Philanthropic Partnership team, our overall goal is to enable and inspire more informed and intentional generosity by all. And our team has about 30 people, and we have sub-teams kind of under that broader goal that are primarily separated by donor segment. So the most famous part of our team, as many of you likely know, is the Giving Pledge. And so the Giving Pledge lives on my team by folks who are working specifically with the ultra high net worth individual donors. And then there are other sort of sub-teams that are focused on collective giving. So they're called Markets and Mechanisms, and they work with collective giving vehicles for high net worth and ultra high net worth individuals. We also have another sub-team called Global Opportunities, or Giving Opportunities rather, and they provide opportunities for individuals and institutions to co-fund alongside the Gates Foundation. And so they've established a vehicle, since we're a private foundation, they've established a public charity called Gates Philanthropy Partners, or GPP, that they manage as an external entity. And lastly, my sub-team that I sit on is called Giving by All, and we're focused on everyday givers. It's a really broad definition within the context of our team. It's obviously so much of our team is focused on the total opposite side of the spectrum. And so I work on, like I said, tech, innovation, and philanthropy on a number of projects. And this one I'm actually managing from where I sit on our Everyday Givers team, but it's a cross-team project, which is why obviously the segment is slightly different for this work.
That's great. And that actually leads me into my next question, which is about the origin of Made to Measure as an initiative. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. It really started at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. And all different parts of the foundation, responded in many different ways. I'll just focus on how it ties to Made to Measure, which was within the Philanthropic Partnerships team. We asked ourselves what we could do, being sort of a donor-facing and philanthropy sector-facing team, what we could do to help in a time of such great need. So we landed on a three-pronged approach. The first was making sizable grants through intermediaries to support local and often informal or neighbor-to-neighbor community response efforts. The second was launching a time-bound public platform to help primarily everyday donors plug into COVID-19 giving and volunteering opportunities. And the third sort of prong was asking whether and how that approach that I just mentioned about everyday givers, how that might work for high capacity donors as well. And so that third prong is what has evolved to what today is called Made to Measure. And that's where you all have joined a cohort of other donor networks, really to test and explore the question of whether and how digital tools might engage and influence high capacity giving, both by individuals and institutions, as the different members of the cohort have different membership models. And so we're really looking at both the quantity and the quality of that giving and seeing, can a platform leverage specifically existing community network trust and relationships that you all have already built and just provide the sort of digitization component to have or potentially influence more resources going to where they're needed most. So really it's all down to the learning agenda for us. As you mentioned, Jen, in your intro, thanks for kind of sharing that background. As being a pilot, it's really focused on the learnings. Yeah.
And that actually reminds me of something I didn't mention in the intro, which is that this initiative started for Philanthropy Network long before I came on board in 2021. The opportunity presented itself, and at that point, Sydney and Shira thought it would be a nice complement to the strategic direction that the organization wants to move in and that we just got done talking about as a group. And to your point, what is it about an online tool that you think that Gates thinks is going to move this needle, versus a conference or some sort of other way to learn and teach and share?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Primarily it's scalability. So the model of, or looking at a platform, we can take the learnings from this pilot and other communities would be able to potentially implement it very quickly. If it's something that is, and I think we'll dig into this more, but really why we called it Made to Measure was it's this middle of the ground. So it's not something that's being totally built from the ground up, custom made for an individual donor network. And it's also not something that's coming straight off the shelf without any customization. It's in the middle there, where it's primarily something that's been mostly made already and is scalable in that sense, but has some tweaks to really resonate with the audience. And so I mentioned that because scalability is really the big piece of why technology, because the learnings, what we're really investing in a pilot is the learnings that we'll share with the broader philanthropic sector. And that is really key for them to be able to replicate. But secondly, it's really actionable. You have live data. So when we're exploring questions within the learning agenda, looking at, can and how does a platform influence giving behaviors, we can see what those behaviors are, and if particular features or phrasing or the way that the types of data that is requested or provided when searching for or exploring giving opportunities, we can see what works and what doesn't, and we can tweak those in near real time, having the ability to work with the technology provider to have things change and adapt to have more positive benefit and more public good in the long run. So that's really kind of the core pieces of why technology. But just to be crystal clear, the technology is not meant to replace anything that's currently offline kind of components that you already have built. It's really just meant to leverage those existing relationships and trust and community and provide a new space to have those connections. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I get it because I've been working with you on it. But that the final thing that I really wanted to ask you about, I mean, as myself and our team at Philanthropy Network are thinking about this platform, we're looking at it in a racial equity light. But at the same time, we have yet to really define what that means. What is equity in grant making? How will we assess equity in grant making? And we think that the data we might be able to get on this platform will play a really important role, as will the connectivity, you know, the easy ability to find others in the community, in the membership community that are doing this work, that are interested in the same things, that are maybe in the lead, and now you can, you know, easily email them and start a conversation. But knowing that we are not going to solve this problem with this platform, what does success look like for the Gates Foundation at the end of the pilot?
Yeah, in short, it's really getting answers to our learning agenda questions. So that's really understanding, is a platform and digital tools effective in changing giving patterns and behaviors? And if so, to what extent can it influence the volume, the frequency, the speed, the types of issues that givers are, that funders are giving to? And so that includes, are we able to provide and obtain data that can move forward racial equity work and move more dollars towards giving opportunities that are related to racial equity? If the platform wasn't existing, would we still be able to move the same amount of dollars? So those types of questions really tie in. And yeah, I would say overall, that's really the focus, is the learning agenda, but also I have, you know, hope that there's a really positive ripple effect that goes out to all of you who will be on the platform, and whether that's just the individual moment of finding even one new opportunity that is new to you, a new individuals, a new nonprofit, a new way to plug in, and that is equally impactful, or even just if it's connecting more deeply with your peers, or thinking more critically or in a different lens about how you're doing the work that you're doing. All of those would be lovely ripple effects, but really its core is the learning agenda for the foundation.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. I just want to take a little time to talk just a little bit more specifically about Philanthropy Network's vision. You know, we're not going into detail today about what it might look like. We don't have it built yet. But, you know, again, we're hoping for data that we can reflect back to the organizations, to the members. We're hoping for connectivity. And we're hoping to get members on board once we have something to work with. And I just want to say to everybody on this meeting that I'm looking for enthusiastic participants when we get to the launch portion, but I'm looking for skeptics as well, because, you know, this is a learning opportunity for us. And my hope is if we even find one or two aspects of this experience that are really helpful, really useful, we'll build off of that, you know, beyond this pilot, and really move that needle forward. I didn't see anything in the chat yet, but if anybody has any questions, we can go to the next slide, and I'm happy to answer anything if you have them. Again, apologies for not having sort of more concrete. We don't have pictures or anything yet to share, but we're excited to move this forward. We will be putting a web page up in the next few days, hopefully next week, that will have some more details about the Made to Measure project. We'll reiterate some of the things we talked about today and provide some additional information, and a little bit more of a timeline in terms of how we hope to move this forward over the next 2 years. But again, just to reiterate that we're interested in the thoughts of the membership to help build this and modify it over the course of the project and learn from it and give feedback. We will, I will also be at the Kumo reception space after this meeting. If you want to hit me up individually to ask a question, that I will also be there for that. And I just, so I do see one question, which is how were the other participants selected? So I'm actually, Sophie, I'm so glad you're still here. So how did you choose the participants of the pilot?
Yeah, sure. We really were looking for a number of different types of diversity in the network. A couple of the networks are regionally focused, others are nationally or internationally focused. Some are working, so each network is unique and it's in the type of work that it's doing or the population that it's working with. And we got to also look at, the types of members in the group. So individual donors versus institutional, or a mix of both. Or in some cases, it's a combination of having members or participants be of the community and of the nonprofits, as well as of the funders of those nonprofits. So really kind of a mixture of the organizational models, geographies, and makeup of the populations served by the group. Thanks, Jen, for putting that in. Exactly.
So I just dropped the names into the chat of the other organizations. I have on the webpage, when we get it up, actual links, so you can go and look at their organizations as well. And I've been grateful to have the opportunity to talk to them, I think all of them at this point, and just learn a little bit more about their vision for this platform, which is, it's a little bit different because we're all serving, a slightly different membership group or cohort of users. So, okay, with that, I want to just turn it back over to Ashley for our final thoughts. Sophie, thank you so much for joining us, for being here and for talking about this project. And again, feel free to email me or chat with me at the Kumo post party.
Thanks so much.